Wow.
So I thought GLers would want to know that. Yes, Chris.
Your guest is ready, sir.
I was, before we joined the rabbi, I must say that I was sent a piece written by Rabbi Michael Barclay in California. And it was such a concise and clear history of what is known as Palestine and Israel that I thought it would be interesting to have the fellow on. And Rabbi, here you are, and thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much for inviting me, and thank you for all the good work you guys are doing.
Now, you are the rabbi at the temple of, pronounce it for me, Ner Simcha?
Ner Simcha means the light of joy, or the candle of joy.
In Westlake Village, California. I had not been aware of your writing before it was sent to me by a listener, and I enjoyed it tremendously. And the reason I asked you on is because what I read from you, I never hear, nor did I necessarily understand. And I wonder if you could recapture that for us.
I can try.
Yeah.
I don't know that I can, but I can try. I write for PJ Media and for American Thinker and among other periodicals, and I have the synagogue here in the suburb of Los Angeles. And I think language is really important,
right?
And I think honesty is extremely important in terms of how we act and what we do, and taking back language and being clear. So, I wrote this piece and have been doing a lot of talking about what's going on in Israel and Palestine and this whole world. And one of the challenges is that people have this connotation that Palestinians are victims and, Palestine has a right to land and Israel is the terms being used is Israel's an apartheid nation.
Right.
Just a colonization nation. Those are words from BLM. Things like that. And, I think that I just think that we need to kind of be clear.
I want to be. That's what we're striving for. We need some clarity here.
Yeah, I mean, look, people are people, and everyone has a right to live, and I pray that everyone enjoys peace and prosperity in their homes and in their families and their lives, and I think that's really important. I think it's also equally important to recognize that this whole Palestine and Palestinian concept is a fallacy. It's made up. It's not real. And it's a brilliant move of marketing through the Arab world over the last 60 years.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, we need to some basic history. And for years, I was a professor at Loyola Marymount University.
Right.
And I'm very big on sourcing things, and anything I can say is easily checked out. And the articles that I write, I have a lot of hyperlinks and to sources and information.
You are a fact-based rabbi.
I'm a heart-based rabbi. Actually, right. My life is about serving God and about the belief that we should always temper our judgment with compassion, and that we really need to take care of each other as human beings. And I'm profoundly sad by this whole war and by the whole situation. And I think one of the ways that we can resolve it is to start getting honest.
All right, let's get honest.
There is no Palestine.
All right.
There has never been a Palestine. It is a made-up fiction. Let's just start with that basic major premise, and let's explain it. There is, in that part of the world, the first kingdom is the kingdom of the Hebrews. When King Saul is the king. And this is roughly 3,500 years ago, 3,200 years ago, in that period. Mm-hmm. Okay, the Hebrews come out of what at the time is called Canaan,
right?
And they go to Egypt, and they come out with Moses and all of that, and then they come in with Joshua, and they go back to their land. Their land is originally from Canaan. The word Hebrew actually means in Ivrit, in Ivrim, in Hebrew, it actually means those who cross over.
All right.
They came from one side of the river and they crossed over into the other side to Egypt, and then they came back. Okay? They come back and they have this kingdom. There's no such thing as Palestine. It doesn't exist.
Okay.
There's a tribe called Philistines, which are a nomadic tribe. They have nothing to do genetically, historically, linguistically, theologically, or in any other way with the modern Arab world. Okay?
Yep.
Absolutely nothing to do with any of that. So we have this kingdom, and the kingdom exists until the 6th century before the Common Era, when it is conquered by the Babylonians. Still no Palestine.
All right.
So they're not in the equation. They come back. The king of Babylon allows them to come back, and they renew their kingdom, and they're ultimately conquered by the Greeks, and they take it. So the Greeks are in charge. There's no Palestine. The Seleucid Greeks are defeated by the Hashmoneans, who become a kingdom. This is in the 2nd century before the Common Era, and it's now again a Jewish kingdom led by the Maccabees. This is the whole story of Hanukkah that happens. Mm-hmm. And again, there's no Palestine. Doesn't exist.
The word doesn't even exist, does it?
Nope.
Oh,
doesn't exist.
All right.
Okay? This is, we're going to get to the point. This is just great marketing on the Arabs' part, and I give them credit for that. So now you have the Hashmoneans. They're defeated by the Romans. And by the way, if you ever go to Jerusalem, you can see a beautiful light show on the at the Tower of David that goes through the history of Jerusalem, of these many kingdoms we're going to talk about. So the Romans take over. No Palestine. Doesn't exist. Okay? Doesn't exist. And this goes on throughout the centuries. Different groups come in, different groups conquer Israel, different kingdoms conquer Israel. No Palestine. Never. Remember, Muhammad isn't even born yet at this point. The first time you have even a Muslim kingdom is the Mamluks, which control the region from the 13th through 16th century. They're a nomadic tribe that end up being a kingdom. They conquer Israel. And they call it Israel. I mean, there's not other things going on. All this time it's being called Israel. Okay?
Yep.
And now we have the Mamluks. Ultimately, that leads to they're defeated, and ultimately we get the Ottoman Empire, which takes over the world. And again, it's called Israel. There's no Palestine.
All right.
In World War I, you start colloquially in the Ottoman Empire around the mid to late 19th century, with people saying, okay, we're going to also call this Palestine as a form of degradation. But you don't have Palestine until 1922. After the British defeat the Ottoman Empire, they create a British mandate, which they call Palestine. Okay? They don't want to get too involved with Jews. They know that there's been a 2,000-year prayer for us to return to Zion, return to Israel, so they call it Palestine.
What does the word mean? Where does it come from?
The British actually take it from the Bibles in terms of saying, well, it's related to Philistine.
All right.
Okay, and it's not even spelled the same way either. So now we have, in 1922, the first idea that the mandate, it's still not a country, still not a nation, of Palestine. And at the same time, they make deals with the different, to create the different Arab kingdoms, Jordan, Syria, Saudi Arabia, which are basically one family with different cousins, by the way, the original kings.
All right.
Okay. So now we have all these countries around and that they've established, and the mandate of Palestine. In 1948, UN Resolution 181 creates the nation, or accepts the nation of Israel, and they also create this idea of a Palestine as well, some part of Jordan. It's really just Jordan. Okay?
Yep.
Still is not Palestine. Still don't have a nation. Israel's attacked by Jordan, by Syria, by all these different countries. Israel keeps winning. And they're not only winning the wars, they're winning the war of public opinion. Now, everyone in the 50s and into the early 60s is a fan of Israel.
Right.
First of all, it's unpopular to say you're an anti-Semite after people realize what happened in the Holocaust and the Nazis. So they don't want to be overt anti-Semites. And everyone loves the David fighting Goliath.
Yes.
So in the early 60s, the United Arab Emirates hire a public relations company out of New York. I forget all three partners' names, but one of the partners was George Anderson. It was a PR company that had been founded in 1909. They're no longer in existence. But it was a big, big New York PR company. It was the Mad Men. And they say, look, the reason you're losing in the world of public opinion, in the court of public opinion, is because everyone cheers for a David over a Goliath, and you need a victim. You need to create a victim. And so in 1964, the Palestinian Liberation Organization is created. This is the first time we have this word Palestinian and Palestine.
All right.
Okay?
Yeah.
1967, we have the Six-Day War, which in June of 67. And as in any defensive war, you keep the land that you win. that's been international law forever.
And Israel keeps winning.
And Israel, thank God, keeps winning.
Right.
And they realize that, it's as the methods of war become faster and stronger, they realize that the country is really always in danger because it's so tiny. Moshe Dayan had said that before the 7-Day War, that he could light a cigarette on one border of Israel and get to the opposite side of the country and the cigarette would still be lit.
And that's something.
That's how small it was.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1967, they keep the Golan Heights in the north. They keep the West Bank, which is Jordan, and they keep all the Sinai Peninsula. Later on, we will make a deal of land for peace with Egypt that, thank God, they have held true to, and we give back a lot of the Sinai. But we take the whole Sinai in 1967. So what do we have? We end up having this territory on the eastern border of Israel, called the West Bank, populated by Jordanians. Their families, their fathers, their grandfathers, their great-grandfathers were Jordanians. In the southwest, we have an area called Gaza that is populated by Egyptians.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the people were there. And they're on the western border. This creates, it really is a brilliant marketing scheme. Because now they get to say that there's a territory on the west border, there's a territory on the east border. They decide that this is all, remember, we have to have a victim. We're going to call all these people who are actually Jordanians and Egyptians, we're going to call them Palestinians, and this is Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason this is so brilliant, in a subtle way, is because by having a territory on the far east and a territory on the far west and saying it's one country, it puts into the consciousness of people that everything in between the river and the sea, is occupied territory. So all of Israel becomes considered occupied territory from Palestine, because they've now said these Egyptians and Jordanians are Palestinians. This is Palestine, Gaza, and the West Bank. So you see how brilliant this really is as a marketing campaign.
It's beginning to work as a marketing campaign.
Well, it's been working for decades, unfortunately, because, for a number of reasons, one of which is that the goal of war, I'm giving a talk on this tonight, the goal of war in Judaism is not victory, the goal of war is peace.
Right.
We'll always trade land for peace. Golda Meir said it very beautifully. He said, if the Arabs put down their weapons, we would have peace tomorrow. If we put down our weapons, God forbid, we would be massacred tomorrow. Right. We will always trade land for peace. We always want peace. It's throughout the Torah, Judaism doesn't seek to go to war, period, and they don't go to war for profit or for land. They don't go for victory. They go only for peace. So, because, look, theologically, I respect my neighbor. I have to. Mm-hmm. He's created by God, too.
Mm-hmm.
So, for the last 60 years, it has become consciousness and taught in academia and taught throughout the world that, this is Palestine. If you look at pretty much any Arab map or globe taught in their elementary schools, there is no Israel. It doesn't exist. The definition of Palestine is from the river to the sea, from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean. There is no Israel. Hamas and Palestinians are not interested and never have been interested in a two-state solution. They're only interested in the destruction of Israel, and they've committed to that, as opposed to peace. So we get to this situation where the world has been inculcated for 60 years into this idea that there's a legitimate Palestine. There isn't. There just isn't. Moreover, in 2005, Israel just wants peace. Israel says to the people in Gaza, you can self-determine. Determine your own government. And so they do. And in 2007, by a vote of 90% of the Palestinians, if we're going to call them that, and I prefer to call them Gazans, mm-hmm. vote for Hamas. And Hamas is put in power. Hamas is not interested, if you look at their charter, they're not interested in a state. They're interested in control of the entire Middle East. They're not interested in having a two-state solution. They're not interested in anything but Israel being utterly destroyed.
Let me stop you right there, because we always wrestle with this. You're explaining it somewhat, but I need help. Why are Jews hated?
So let's go back in order to really answer that.
Yeah.
I kind of have to speak a couple minutes on anti-Semitism, if that's okay.
That's fine.
So let's go back to the idea of what anti-Semitism is. It is a hate that is not based in acquisition of anything. As an example, the Nazis did not gain anything by killing Jews. They actually lost a lot. It was a financial burden on them.
Right.
But there's a real hate. So why is there this hate?
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Christian scriptures. There's no question that the early Christians were persecuted by the Jewish establishment 2,000 years ago. Not even a question. Okay, they were.
Mm-hmm.
This guy Jesus shows up, and he's not accepted as a Messiah, and the Jewish establishment persecutes the early Christians. Okay? By the way, not the way it can say in the gospel, it's not a possibility, just as an aside. When in the Christian scriptures it talks about the people gather in the court, says that they're going to free the thief as opposed to Jesus. That could not have happened. It's a physical impossibility because it happened during the time of Passover when we don't have court. So it'd be like me saying, hey, I just beat a traffic ticket on Christmas Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
You look at me and say, that's not possible. Court's not open. Same thing.
Right.
But much of the Gospels are written, first of all, they're written 75 to 150 years after the life of Mark, John, etc.
Right.
By people who knew about them. And they're written as a polemic against the Jewish establishment. Again, very understandable because the Jewish establishment did persecute the early Christians. In the 4th century, you start to have even more hatred because you have something called the Vulgate is created. The Vulgate is the official Catholic at that time, or Christian Bible. And there's translations in Hebrew. In Hebrew, there are no vowels, so you have to know what's being said. And when the Vulgate is translated, it has a very disturbing comment that's done consciously, because the translator does it properly in other places. In the Hebrew, it says Moses came down from Mount Sinai, and there was a ray of light shining from his head. The word for shining from the head, to do that, is the word karan. The word for horns is karen. You can see the K-R-N in both those words. And the Vulgate translates that Moses comes down and has horns. And this is why Michelangelo's sculpture of Moses has horns. You look at it. That translation from the 4th century is the official Catholic Bible until the 1970s. Okay? So you have now Jews have horns, and they killed God. If you're a Christian, you believe that Jesus is God. In 1144, Norwich, England, right before Passover and Easter, a little boy is found. He's not found. He's missing. And the local priest begins what's called the blood libel. He says that in order for Jews to make matzah, they must use the blood of a Christian child. Just to understand how ridiculous that is, besides what it just seems like on its face, one of the serious prohibitions in Judaism going back to Torah is we can't have anything with blood. The reason kosher meat is so salty is because you have to salt it to get all the blood out.
Okay.
I'm not allowed to eat steak tartare.
Right.
Okay?
Well, you'd be wise not to.
Well, yeah. I really have no desire. But so it doesn't really appeal to me. So I like my meat cooked.
Me too.
So you can't. So now it's absolutely ludicrous, but that's what the priest does. And remember, most people can't read; they don't study that. They trust what their clergy tells them. And so now you have a world that the Jew is considered to have killed God, to have horns, and to drink blood.
Okay.
Making us into a demon or devil type of thing. And that's perpetuated for 2,000 years. I know people, and most Jews do know someone, if it was not themselves, who've been asked, okay, we're friends, can you show me your horns? Okay, now, it sounds ludicrous.
It'd be a hell of a trick, wouldn't it?
It's what happens is some, guys in the armed forces, in the service, he's in the Army, the Marines, whatever, goes through boot camp, and some guy says to him, okay, we're buddies now. Can you tell me, you can show me, can I see your horns? or where they were cut off. Okay? So this is a myth that still exists today.
Oh.
So there's this incredible hatred that's been inbred for 2,000 years. Moreover, you combine that with the fact that in Judaism, one of the major values is that our children should be better educated than we are. We teach Talmud, we teach argumental, critical thinking, we teach mathematics, things like that. That's part of our tradition.
Probably a big burden for your kids, I bet, huh?
Yeah. There's a whole syndrome about rabbi's kid. I have 14-year-old twins, and it's challenging. I will only tell you that it was easier before they had hair under their arms. But,
right.
So it's hard, right? They learn all this. So when you get to the Middle Ages, where Jews are not, they're being persecuted, they're being viewed as subhumans. Actually, let me back up a little bit. In the 8th century caliphates, they want to be able to mark Jews, and they say Jews carry a disease. So we're going to mark them. They all have to wear a yellow star. That's where the yellow star comes from. It does not come from the Nazis. It comes as a mark based on health. And if that brings up parallels to show me your papers for COVID, it should, because there were way too many similarities. And so we have the yellow star that's coming from the caliphates. Again, the Jews didn't accept Jesus, and they don't accept Muhammad. So now we have all that. In the Middle Ages, you've got educated Jews who, what can they do? They're not allowed to own land, so they become merchants. And you also have these Jews, and you see it with Shakespeare, you have these Jews who become, they get involved in banking, where the nobleman doesn't know mathematics, he doesn't know language, he can't collect his taxes from his serfs. So he hires the Jew to do that. That means that the Jew is now hated by the serfs because he's collecting money from the nobleman, and he's hated by the nobleman because the nobleman figures he's cheating. Combine that along with killing God, drinking blood, having horns, and there's all this hatred towards Jews. And it goes on, and it keeps going on until we have the Holocaust. And right after the Holocaust, it's very difficult to say, okay, we still hate the Jew, because it becomes clear what Hitler did and the horrors that he did. But what happens is, by the time we get to the early 80s, late 80s, the anti-Semitism that has been inbred for 2,000 years, but can't be expressed overtly, starts being expressed as anti-Israel. Can't say I'm against Jews, but I can say against Israel, because Israel's a bully. Going back to what we just learned, they're a bully because they stole Palestine.
Which doesn't exist.
Which never existed. But it plays, and we never drank blood and we never had horns, but that doesn't matter. Right?
Right.
And we didn't kill Jesus. So, it just doesn't matter. There's a reality that what people believe is more important than the truth in terms of how they act. And so we have this situation that starts happening in the 80s and the 90s, where that inbred anti-Semitism can now be expressed as anti-Israel.
Okay. Yeah.
By the time you get into the 2000s, once you get to Obama's time and you start having BLM be accepted and Omar and Tlaib and these kind of people, it stops even being anti-Israel and starts becoming anti-Jew again, without any shame. Omar making the comment, it's all for them, it's all about the Benjamins, things like that. And we need to, and I bring up BLM because, there's the phrase, I got the receipts to prove it. I was writing articles 4 years ago, and you can find them on PJ Media. I was writing articles 4 years ago that no one should be supporting BLM because in their charter, in their manifesto, they call for the destruction of Israel. They're very clear about it. And yet liberal rabbi after a Jewish organization like the ADL would say, oh, no, we want to support BLM. They don't really mean that they want Israel destroyed. Well, we found out last week they showed exactly that they have always meant that. Okay. And I assume you saw the memes. If not, you can find them. But BLM Los Angeles and Chicago actually cheered on Hamas.
You've got kids in San Francisco in high schools cheering on Hamas. You've got Rashid Tlaib cheering on Hamas. You've got I want to take a short break here. Can you hang with us?
Absolutely. I'll do whatever you need. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Because we're speaking with Rabbi Michael Barclay of in Los Angeles. But I want to tell you that EcoFund has taken snow into consideration, even though it's a gorgeous day. There's 10 Yamaha snowmobiles left in stock. They've got snow plows and snow blowers. The rabbi doesn't have to worry about that where he lives. Steel, universal plows, ATVs, side-by-sides, two-stage snow throwers. I didn't know EcoFund went this heavily into winter, but they do. These are fuel-injected side-by-sides. They're amazing. All kinds of the equipment for outdoors in the winter. And right now, for pickup and delivery, they'll pick up your scooter and take it in and store it for the winter and tend the battery and do a tune-up. And just great people. It's EcoFund Motorsports in Forest Lake. It's on 97, immediately west of 35, and in Burnsville on the Service Road of Life near County Road 42. All right, Rabbi, thank you for that.
Thank you
for that.
Can I get one of those Yamahas? Are they going to be useful?
You need that like a hole in the head. Tell me what happened last Saturday.
You mean October 7th?
Yeah.
Let's go through a little bit more. In the last 9 months, Israel has given more aid to Gaza and loosened up more things in Gaza than in the last 3 years combined. And just to give an idea of how much Israel wants these people to be peaceful and prosperous, I don't know if it's still true, but I know for many years the best-selling beer in the IDF was a Palestinian beer, because they recognized that if people are making money, they don't want to go be homicide bombers.
Mm-hmm.
So they open this up. And if I start to lose it, I'm going to ask your apologies, for your forgiveness. On October 7th, they come out of Hamas. Hamas attacks Israel. And they attack it. They don't attack Israel as a nation. They consciously go out to find the weakest civilians they can, with one intention: to rape, so that they're dirty, murder, and kidnap every civilian they can, children and women, and they paraglide into a dance party, a rave,
Mm-hmm.
where they kidnap and kill. There's a video that you can find on YouTube. It's also on my Twitter feed of Noah Ben Artsy, who was one of the people who survived that attack at that dance party. They kill someone and then rape his girlfriend on his dead corpse. They go and kidnap children and babies and old people, and they go out with one specific intention, which is to attack the weak and kill them, take them hostage.
This is crazier than they've ever acted, is it not?
So, I live from a place of theology, my faith and our text. This is where I go to for my answers. And the two teachings that I've been repeating, sending, I do 2 to 3 emails a day to our community. I've written a dozen articles for PJ, human events, and different things like that. The Bible, our Hebrew scriptures, are filled with forgiveness. Maimonides, who was a great rabbi and philosopher 1,000 years ago, said, if you find hate or anger in the Bible, it's you, it's not God. You're bringing it to the table. That, in fact, the Torah is filled with love and forgiveness. And we consistently find that everyone is forgiven. King David does some really horrible, horrible things. He's forgiven.
Mm-hmm.
There's one exception, and this exception is mentioned a few times. It says that God will always be at war with Amalek, that we are to be at war with Amalek from generation to generation. We are to destroy Amalek and blot it off the earth. And it's kind of a weird phrase, because why? It doesn't say the children of Amalek. It doesn't say the descendants of Amalek, so it's not about the genetics. It says Amalek. And this is so important that King Saul, the reason he loses his kingship and is deposed is because he doesn't kill all the Amalekites when he's commanded to. And he actually says, in the Midrash we're taught that he actually says, why should the young be punished for the deeds of the old? And because he doesn't kill them all, he actually loses his kingship. Prophet Samuel takes away. So we got to kind of look at, well, wait a minute, what's this Amalek thing? And so our sages talk about this. There's a fabulous book by Rabbi Elijah Shochet called Amalek, the Enemy Within, that really goes into this. I think it's about 30 years old. And the idea is that Amalek...
What's Amalek?
Amalek is the king of a nation, of a tribe.
All right.
During when Moses is getting out of Egypt, when they're crossing during that 40 years. Because, if you just don't give us directions, we'll just keep wandering forever.
Right.
So, we wandered 40 years to find the only land in the region without oil.
Right.
So Amalek is the one tribe that Amalek chooses to attack the Hebrews from behind, where the weak, the children, the young, the defenseless are. And the idea is that kind of perpetrator has crossed a line that cannot be forgiven. That kind of perpetrator is so evil they have surrendered their human souls to something less. And that when we find that, we are to destroy it. Now, internally, that would mean like an addiction. Okay? An addiction preys upon the weak part of our souls. And so you don't give an alcoholic one drink, you cut it out entirely. Right? You don't give a heroin addict one snort, you cut it out entirely. Externally, occasionally, sadly, there are people, there are cultures, there are organizations that are modern Amaleks, where it's not as an act of war that innocent civilians get killed, but actually their intent is to attack first, like Amalek in biblical times, the weak, the defenseless, the children.
And that's what happened.
If you had asked me a month ago what should be done with Hamas, I would say to you that we should do everything we can to arrange peace, to figure out a peace that can work.
What do you say today?
They have to be utterly destroyed. They have to be entirely destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And the pain that I cannot relate to you, the pain that gives me, that we need to destroy. Because there's not a Hamas soldier that was born this way. They came out of the womb as babies with pure souls. And they have surrendered those souls to evil.
There is evil in the world that I think that gets forgotten.
This is our definition of the unforgivable evil. And there's a piece that we need to remember in this. There's a midrash, over 2,000-year-old teaching, that says that when the Hebrews were getting out of Egypt and Pharaoh's soldiers were drowned in the Sea of Reeds, that the angels started to rejoice, and God, through his tears, stopped them and said, the work of my hands is being destroyed, and you want to sing hymns? Mm-hmm. And teaching in this is, we cannot let hate or anger enter our hearts. We cannot take any joy in this. Because if we do, we've lost a bigger war, which is the war for our own souls. We've become nothing better than them. And it is a profound and deep pain that we have to kill these guys.
Yep.
And there is no joy in that.
And
there's no joy.
As you look out over the coming weeks, what do you see?
I see Israel that is unified. I see Israel that is very concerned about the world because, it's a very tiny country. It's a very tiny armed forces. And when you have too many fronts, it becomes more and more difficult. Look, we could end this war in 2 weeks without one Israeli casualty. Okay?
Yep.
Let's be clear. We could carpet bomb Gaza. And Hamas would be gone.
Right.
We could cut off all water, food, electricity, and supplies to Gaza. 2 weeks, done. Instead, because of our commitment to ethical behavior, our commitment to life, and that we go in, and it takes 5 Israeli soldiers to clear one house. It takes a platoon to clear a building.
Mm-hmm.
We put our lives on the line to save civilians who are being used as shields by Hamas. It's a great statement, and it's a profoundly sad one, that Israel uses the IDF to protect its civilians. Hamas uses its civilians to protect Hamas. And they're comfortable with that because they don't care. It makes no difference. And it is, instead of doing this the easy way and saving Israeli lives, Israel and Judaism value all lives. And so we don't do that. We don't go in and do what most nations would do, which is just carpet bomb it, get done. Be done with it and not risk any of our people. Instead, every Israeli soldier is at risk going in and trying to save people that they don't know and that want them dead.
Right.
And so, I hope this will be over sooner than later. I'm concerned I don't think it will be, because we're going to go in and try and do this and save every single life. In Judaism, we believe that to save a life is the greatest thing you can do, because you're saving a world, because you're saving all of the descendants of that life as well. And so the IDF will go in and they will risk their lives every moment to save the lives of people who want them dead. And hopefully it'll be relatively quick. One of my big concerns is what is going on in the world outside of that region. You look at Tlaib leading a quote-unquote demonstration that takes over the Capitol building. I'm sorry, I thought it was called something else on January 6th. That have take over and are yelling and screaming. Hamas misfires a rocket. There is absolute proof. Even Ilhan Omar admits that it was Hamas that fired the rocket. Even she came out, I think, last night and admitted that. And we knew from the moment that it happened that it was fired from a cemetery and landed in a parking lot. And yet minutes after it happened, and the IDF has, and they've shown it now, they've released it, audio of Hamas commanders talking to each other saying, we just shot ourselves. We
right.
Just landed in the, but they immediately released that Israel attacked and killed 500 wounded in the hospital, which is so ludicrous. I mean, just on a simple level, it takes days to figure out how many people died from October 7th, and yet in 2 minutes they know exactly how many people died in the hospital.
Why would American progressives be so eager to take up the side of Hamas?
Well, it's ironic because, you have these LGB alphabet.
They wouldn't last
groups.
2 minutes there.
No, they'd be killed.
Yeah.
Okay. But what has been done is it's very much modeled after what was done in Nazi Germany in the 30s. People don't realize that Hitler got to power by bringing together coalitions of minority groups that ultimately, most of them, he ended up destroying. There were a couple 100,000 Jews who supported Hitler originally. And brought together these groups that felt disenfranchised and said, see, that that government is the big bad people. And that's what they're doing again here. And it's been used successfully with BLM. It's been used successfully, in many different ways in the last.
It's
10
being
years.
used successfully in the university system.
It's horrible. There was a professor who released a video, I think yesterday, a professor at Columbia. I don't know if you saw it. It's actually
I did
on my Twitter. Yeah, it's very powerful. That you can't send your kid to a college right now. It can't be kept safe. You wouldn't have a KKK group, but you have all these pro-Hamas terrorist groups on college campuses. And it's not safe, and it's scary. It's very, very concerning because we're on the edge of another Holocaust. It is, and it's not. These are people who. It's not just Jews that they want to destroy, and not just Israel. They want to destroy the United States. Let's be clear on that. And they want to destroy the values of the United States, and they want to destroy the process of the United States.
It's something we've discussed on this show for years. I call it the mystery, the attempt to bring about a country that is not the United States, and it's happening right before our very eyes.
And it's happening in ways that are insidious. I have a lot of anger on a personal level for a lot of politicians. And just, I keep politics entirely off the pulpit. I do a lot, as you know, a lot of writing. I do a lot of speaking that has to do with politics and spirituality. I do not talk politics from my pulpit at all. Won't do it. I don't think that's my place. I think my place as a congregational rabbi from the pulpit is to help people deepen their awareness of their relationship with God through a Jewish pathway. And so I don't talk politics. But the reality is that many Jewish organizations do and have given up their Jewishness to support leftist causes, the ADL being a prime example. The Anti-Defamation League used to be part of B'nai B'rith. It's a 100-year-old organization. In 2009, they broke off from B'nai B'rith. In 2014-15, they hired Jonathan Greenblatt as the head of their organization, who's a former Obama staff person. And he starts partnering the ADL, which its mission was to protect Jews in a legal way from abuses. And he changes the motto to we fight hate for good, partners with people like Al Sharpton and BLM, raises tons of money for himself, for ADL, for BLM together, and just justifies it. He justifies, well, this is a Jewish cause. Well, no, it's not. BLM wants Israel destroyed. And it is. And are you familiar with Horst Wessel? Do you know who that was?
No.
So this is a great piece of history, and it's a very telling one. In the early 30s, I don't know the exact year, I want to say somewhere around 33, 34, something like that. But in the early 30s, there is a Nazi named Horst Wessel. This is before Nazis have taken over the nation. And he's a pimp and a drug dealer. He's a bad guy, okay? And he's not paying his rent to his landlady. So his landlady, who's a widow, goes to friends of her deceased husbands who are communists. And she says, go collect the rent. And they go collect the rent by beating him, and he dies in the hospital. Horrible tragedy, horrible story. Bad guy, but horrible story. Hitler and Himmler are ecstatic because they now have a martyr. And so they use Horst Wessel to mobilize people to have, and this is their phrase, peaceful demonstrations. And it becomes the Brown Shirt riots. George Floyd is directly modeled and copied after that incident. Sorry George Floyd died. No one should die, but the guy was a bad guy, let's be honest. And it's used the exact same way Hitler did. In literally verbatim. This is how the country has been shifting and buying into it. And instead of standing up and saying, wait a minute, yes, this is wrong, but you don't get to go riot. You don't get to burn down Portland. You don't get to burn cities. You don't get to loot. Instead of doing that, the world becomes fans of BLM, and Patricia Colders buys 6 houses, 6 mansions, and we see our country changing in a really scary way. And there's a truth. Mark Twain said it 150 years ago. He said, the white man hates the black man hates the yellow man hates the red man, but everybody hates the Jew. And it's pretty consistent throughout history because of the anti-Semitism that's so ingrained and discussed. It's pretty consistent that when there's a problem, it's going to ultimately be blamed on the Jew.
Sir, might we remain in touch with you in the coming months and weeks?
I would be honored. And I'm here anytime, and I really appreciate the work you're doing. And anything I can help with, you can. Most of the articles I write at this point are also posted on Twitter, which is Rabbi_Barclay, Barclay.
Right.
I also want to, if I may, make a plug for something.
Yes.
That I think is important. People ask, what can they do? And there's a lot of organizations, a lot of good things that are being done. There's also, if I'm honest, there's people who are taking advantage, like they do, of any situation like this for their own benefits. There's a hospital in Haifa called B'nai Zion. They just finished recently building a $20 million facility that is under a bunker that is actually nuclear proof.
All right.
And they need equipment, and they need anesthetic devices and electric beds and, all this kind of stuff, because they're taking many of the civilians from the south, and as conflict heats up in the north, which it has, and God forbid, but it will probably heat up more with Hezbollah, they'll be one of the main facilities taking those. You can go to healthcareforisrael.org. That's healthcare for spelled out, F-O-R, Israel.org. And any donation you make makes a difference. We put this out a week ago to our community, and then Sebastian Gorka put it on his radio show and on his TV show. And as of the other day, there's been $177,000 that has gone to the hospital, and they've bought medical equipment. And it's a way to immediately save lives, hundreds of lives now, and thousands over the course of the next years. It's a way of, you don't necessarily want to be supporting a war effort. You're not comfortable with that. This is supporting healing. So I really want to recommend people go to healthcareforisrael.org. They can find what I'm writing and find what I'm doing on Twitter as Rabbi_Barclay, Barclay. And I'm here for anything you guys need. I really appreciate the good work you're doing. I really, really do.
We'll be in touch. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi. And I'll make all of that available at the Garage Logic show page for today.
All right, Rabbi, I got a guy who works with us.
Okay,
He's a little bit of a loose cannon, and he has to tell you something.
I just want to give you, I'm sure you have the crowd whenever you're speaking, but if you're going to, if you want to loosen up the crowd a little bit.
I bet he knows this, by the way.
Bar or bat mitzvah?
Yeah.
What kind of, you mentioned beer earlier, what kind of beer did they drink in the Holy Land way back?
What kind?
Hebrew.
Okay, now I have to leave you with one other story.
Okay, wait, one more. What did the fat people drink?
What do they think?
Israel Light.
See,
all right.
I'm sorry, I warned you, sir. I warned you.
The relationship is now soured, rookie.
Yes.
Here's your story that you can share with everyone when they really want to understand Palestine.
All right.
Okay?
Yep.
The United Nations ambassador, the Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, is about to give a speech, and he says, before I give my speech, I would like to tell a story. Because thousands of years ago, Moses came into the Holy Land, and he bathed in the Jordan. And when he got out of the bath, out of the Jordan, his clothes had been stolen by a Palestinian. Oh. Immediately, the Palestinian ambassador jumps up and says, that's absurd. It's a blatant lie. We were not even in the area in that time. And the Israeli ambassador goes, great, now that we've established that, I'd like to give my speech.
Okay. Good luck tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys, and God bless you all in the journey.
All right, thank you.